Good afternoon, folks. I hope everyone is off to a good start of the new year. When Melissa and I were kind of starting to plan out our RY23 open office hour trajectory, we were trying to space them out as much as we can and did not want to burden anyone with a webinar the first week of the new year because I don't know about you, but it was really, really tough coming back online last year because fortunate for our organization, we're closed between Christmas and New Year's, so it's slow winding up, but I'm excited to welcome you all to our first open office hour of the 2030 reporting season. It's 2024, but we're going back RY23, so that is what you'll see in all the communications. Even though I do realize in our YouTube channel, the covers call it 2024 open office hours, so I might be changing that. Stay tuned, but I hope you are all ready to talk about 2030 reporting and the gears are turning. You know your firm's strategy already. You know, oh, this will be a walk in the park, 5, 10 projects, 100, whatever. I got it all down. But you're here just for some extra support. So I am happy to welcome you all. We have a pretty good attendance, exciting. And if you don't know me, you will in 3 months be so sick of my name as well as Melissa's. I'm Ina Bakioki. I use she, her pronouns. I am the AI 2030 program manager here at AI National. I work on 2030 and the Materials Pledge programs. Great. If you want to pop in the chat a quick hi, I'm coming from X, Y, and Z, my firm name, feel free. I know we are constantly trying to improve community building on the virtual environment, so would be glad to kind of see folks do a quick introduction. I'm sure there are so many commonalities across you all and the projects that you're working on and firms and locations, so always here to kind of reinforce, like, you all have committed to 2030. We want you all to learn from us. We want to learn from you and you all to learn from each other. All right, so this is our walk through the DDX. I will let my program director, my boss, Melissa, kick it off. And yeah, and feel free to also pop into the chat any questions that kind of come across as Melissa is presenting. We'll try to answer them on the fly, or if it might warrant a little more discussion, there will be some time at the end of the webinar to kind of talk through it live. All right, to you.
Thanks, Ina. As Ina said, I'm the Director of Climate Action Pledge Programs here at AIA, and we are here to do a walkthrough reminder of the DDX for anyone who's taken, 9 months off of hanging out in there, reminding everyone how to use it. We will also do a little recap of some of the updates that have been made this year, so you guys can be reminded of that. And I do want to also note that we have Vanessa Hostick and Jesse Walton here from the 2030 Working Group. So if we have any seriously technical questions, we may be calling on them to help me out in that regard. So luckily, they are both practicing and interacting with their own projects in the DDX all the time and have a great deal of experience with some of those weird and unique problems that you all kind of come across with, some of those interesting projects that don't really seem to fit perfectly. And those seem to be the most questions that we get. So we're just going to start with the basics today. And as Ina said, put your questions in the chat and I will try to address those as we go through. So we're going to start right with the database. So when you first log in, this is what you might see. This is the view of an administrator. So if you are a user and not an administrator, you're going to have one less button up here in that you cannot a user cannot submit a portfolio. Only administrator can do that. So the view would be different for those two perspectives. So if you don't see that button, it is okay, unless you are supposed to be responsible for submitting the portfolio for your firm, in which case you should talk to someone at your firm or email Ina, and we will work that out for you. So we're just going to start with the very basics of adding a project. So I'm going to go over here to the right and the little create project button. And so some of the updates I might actually walk through as we do it. So project name, we are going to go with Vanessa's house. It is an active project. And there's a whole building project. So I'm going to pause over here at my firm project number. So this is an automatic number that the DDX will give you. If you have a particular way that you are tracking projects within your firm and you want to give this a custom number, so if we are saying that we do AIA 23 project 2, we can give it a custom number within our firm, and it can match how you label projects within your actual firm. And so there is a one-to-one connection. Therefore, this number doesn't get lost to you. This number is important, and that is the thing that will track a project from year to year. So you will want to make sure that that is consistent. All right, this is a new construction, and it is being done in the DC office. It is in the United States, and it is in Washington, DC. Or that is a DC area code. But if I now say that it's in Alaska, the DDX will now tell me that is not correct. And that is a new thing that it does now that it did not do last year. Hopefully, we will eliminate issues between and kind of picking or having issues between a zip code and a state. This is only a feature that will work on domestic projects. There is no way for us to track all international zip codes and connect them to the proper countries. I do not think that that technology exists in the interwebs for us to pull from. So we will be making sure at least we will have accurate US data in this regard. So I'm going to pick the appropriate answer and then my units. So does anyone have any questions on just what resource do you use to identify the climate zone? So the DDX talks to Zero Tool, and it uses your zip code, and it in the back end of the DDX, it kind of pops over to Zero Tool, pulls some information, and it brings it back over here. So that information comes from that tool. We'll check other. Is Puerto Rico included under the US? That is a brilliant question. I do not know. Christina, if you put in a Puerto Rico zip code, let's find out. If you can tell me one. Because now I'm intrigued to know.
It is. It's listed under. I don't know if the zip code thing's going to work. Check that. But it is listed under the United States, yes.
All right. We have a zip code. All right. Well, it's flagging it as not District of Columbia. So that's a good sign. Let me think all this out for a second. All right, we're going to kind of restart. All right, we seem to have an issue there, but we'll circle back on that later. We'll double check this offline and talk to our person.
You might need to change your city. I don't know if that got included in it.
I don't think it does. And now I can't think of any cities in Puerto Rico because I'm blanking.
Try San Juan.
pulls the city. But we'll double check that after, okay, Christina?
Thank
But
you.
we'll put it back in DC. All right. So we have saved that basic information in the DDX. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about Ross's question. Can you talk about the distinction between interior only new construction versus major reno? That is a great question. So we classify things as interior only when the only real energy number you would have is a lighting power density. A major reno, you would be changing something that would change the energy use of the building. So the enclosure, new windows, new systems. So if you have a new mechanical system or something else that would change how the building would operate and change how the building's energy use would be affected. That is sort of how I define the difference. Vanessa or Jesse, do you want to weigh in on that one? How you've kind of defined that at your firms?
Like new construction, whole building is the really easy, obvious one. You're doing a new building and you're putting in systems. Corn shell gets a little sketchy, but generally that one's easier. For interiors, it is in any type of interior renovation, or if it's an addition, we're only providing interior scope of work that has lighting in its scope, then that's when it gets triggered as an interior. So we've had some renovation work that was minor and we didn't replace the systems. And even though we were doing work on the whole building, it still got reported as an interior because we weren't touching any envelopes, any systems. It was not a level 3 alteration. It was a level 2. So that's kind of where we kick it in. We follow existing building code. I don't know if that helps or makes it worse. And fun fact, there are lots of good extensive definitions in our help pages because we spent a lot of time editing those this year or in the last year.
Very true. Thanks, Vanessa. All right, estimated occupancy year. We are gonna say that this project will be occupied in 2026 because we are already, so this is a 2023 project. Energy code used. So we have a list of energy code, and for anyone in California, last year we have added California Title 24. We'll select that one, but we know that was a big question last year. We can add occupants, estimated cost, and estimated site works, but that's not required. So I'm just going to leave those blank for now, and estimated construction costs. Down here, configure your use types and establish a baseline. We have to say what the program is. So we are going to say, even though I called it Vanessa's house, we're going to make it more complicated now. We are going to say that it is a education general, and that is, oh, back up, one of the updates. Another thing that we have done to the DDX, you cannot enter a project that is under 100 square feet or over 5 million square feet. There were some projects that were in there that might have been test projects that may have slipped through some folks' portfolios. I assume that none of you are working on that many projects that are under 100 square feet. And if you are working on a project that is over 5 million square feet, odds are it is a more campus planning or a bigger kind of planning using multiple buildings. And our recommendation would be that you input the different buildings separately. And that will keep things cleaner for your overall portfolio as you move forward. If you have any questions about that, feel free to pop in and ask us that later. So all these updates are really to help improve our overall data quality. So we can reference it more accurately and make sure that it's being useful for research and everything around that. So we have added the program, and that has given us our baseline EUI. So again, this number is calculated from pulling it from the Zero tool, which is CBEX 2003. So that is this number down here. And we're going to save and continue. So we are currently at an 80% reduction goal for the 2030 commitment program. And an 80% reduction goal for this project would be having a predicted energy use intensity of 18.19. In this graph down here, you can see the two project types that we entered into our project and what the range is for projects entered in the DDX with those kinds of projects. So you can sort by different project types, or you can sort by climate zones. So if we just wanted to look at our own climate zone, we can do that. And so you can see where your project lays in regards to everything else. So we're going to save and view project. And it brings you to the project's overall profile. In that, you see this big red banner at the top that says track design progress is not complete. So we have one more step before we've completed the submission. So we can track data either here, there's a little button in the right-hand box, and you can also add design data down here. And those are both pathways to getting design data into the DDX. So we will now say what stage of design it's at. So reporting phase, we're going to say that we're in schematic design, and it is for reporting year 2023. That is the default. Do not change it to 2024. We are in reporting year 2023, as Ina said. I think there were quite a few people that made that mistake last year. And then I believe the question was, why is the correct answer not the default answer? And I was like, it is. What are you putting in? So we are going to save and go back to the dashboard. All right, Suzanne has a question. Can you talk about when your project type is not supported by ZeroTool, i.e. labs, parking for EV and charging? And I'm again going to throw it back to my handy colleagues. Jesse or Vanessa want to handle that one?
For benchmarking for labs, we use, it'd take me a minute because I'm having flashbacks when it was Labs 21, I2SL. We use the I2SL toolkit, and I'll drop the link here in a minute. The parking for EV charging, we don't typically report parking structures or parking lots. So that one, if you can expand a little more, is not typically included as a standalone project. So it's not a conditioned building. And we're really focused on conditioned buildings here. But labs are specific. That I2SL is the best database we have for reference. Some of the others, manufacturing was a big topic last year. You can look to Energy Star Target Finder if you have no other data, but for a lot of the manufacturing, your best bet is if you can get an existing facility from the client and use that as an existing baseline to compare against, because manufacturing is so specific to the product being output that's really our most reliable source. So it depends a little. As you find those buildings, kick that question over. Some of us have modeled benchmarks for a couple of the other unique building types or existing building data we can share. Otherwise, start with Energy Star Target Finder or I2SL. Jesse, that covers most of the weird ones I work on. I don't know if you have any others to add.
No, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay. I'm trying to look back at some of the other questions before we jump ahead. Okay, so clarification, the question was asking about the distinction between interior only new construction versus interior only major renovation.
That one's a little easier. I apologize for the long-winded answer before then. If you have an existing design that you are changing in any way or reconfiguring, that's what kicks you into renovation. I think major renovation throws people off. We typically use it for any renovation. the new construction is truly when you're going into a corn shell building and fitting it out for the first time. So it's a first time fit out versus a modified or renovated space. Kind of think of it that way.
Thanks, Vanessa. And there was a question on how you set the savings from baseline. So savings from baseline on this particular project, I hadn't totally addressed that yet. It is being pulled from the code that we put into the project. So I didn't add any other information besides the energy code, and that was in the other step. And then when we got to the track data, we just did design development in 2023. So when we saved that, it calculated the savings solely based on what energy code that we said we were building to. Down here, we have the ability to use predicted energy use. And so if we have done an energy model, we would say yes here, and we would then fill out our energy modeling information. So I think it's important to say that it is not required, and no firm energy models every single project that they have. But based on previous data, we do feel like it is, well, we know it's incredibly important to energy models. So while we want all of your data, including those projects that are not energy modeled, we do want to encourage people to continue to do that, in that you typically get better performing projects when you are energy modeling them. So you have to say, when was it energy modeled? We will say that it was energy modeled on October 3rd. What tool was used? So this list has been updated as well. And so you can see the options in our help pages as well as here in the dropdown. Trying to add some of the new tools like Epic that are being used these days. And we eliminated some that were not being used anymore, trying to simplify things for everyone. So we're just going to say that we used Epic. Then the question is, who energy modeled it? So we're going to say a modeling consultant, and then you can say how much money was spent on modeling. And we won't do that, but we will say that we had a gross PUI modeled, and that was 25, and then we had a net PUI. So the reason there might be different numbers, gross PUI is how much you reduce the overall energy need of the building. So how much the building would use. Net would be indicating that you had renewables on top of that. So this could make your building net zero, or closer, or even net positive. So we could say that we had a lot of renewables and it is a 3. So not quite net zero, but getting pretty close. And if you are just doing predicted energy use and you only have that information for our energy model, you can save and go back to the dashboard. But if we have even more information, we could go into a fuel sources section. So I would click yes, I have fuel source information, and then I can drop in information here about fuel sources. So you do need to say that you have some sort of need, so whether it be grid electricity or a fossil fuel. And so you would insert that and how much, and then you can add renewables, on-site renewables. There. So you could also, but if you add, so if you see down here, let's actually add that other 0. So if I do that, then I am making more energy on site than we are using. So if you see that, you can see all the numbers say that it is a net zero project. But if I add fossil fuels to the project, then I will no longer have a net zero project, because I am using fossil fuels. But I somehow did that wrong. So I'm gonna hang on a second. I'll use gas. All right. Then I say that I used renewables, and then I can add more information about renewables. And if that is the information I have, I can save and go back to the landing page. I'm going to call in Jesse and ask if you can help me explain the new fields around our lovely green box, even though I just created a ridiculous project. So
Yeah, sure. So the fields on the bottom are all the different types of EUIs. I was just typing in the chat here, or yes, all the different types of EUIs. So the baseline EUI you see on the bottom left, that is based on the 2003 CBEX database. That is the EUIs we are using to determine what percent reduction we are shooting for. Those baseline EUIs are determined based on your project type. So lab space or a hospital is different from a school. Also based on the building area, you'll see those numbers change in Zero Tool. You have a smaller building versus a larger building, and then of course the location. There are some national numbers as well, and I think you should probably be using your regional numbers because that's what the Zero Tool is pulling from. So that's your baseline EUI. Your target EUI is 80% reduction from that baseline EUI. So if you multiply that baseline EUI by 0.2, that's what's getting you that target EUI number. The gross PEUI, so that is what is coming from your energy model. So either you or your mechanical engineer is creating an energy model and estimating the amount of kBTU per square foot per year for your project. It looks like we're not quite near our target for this example, but that's the gross number. And then the net number is if you have on-site renewables or dedicated off-site renewables, you can use, say, those kilowatt hours to reduce your gross EUI to hopefully to net zero energy, net zero carbon. I think that covers it. And then at the top, that's your operational carbon. Those numbers will only appear if you are reporting fuel sources. That's correct, right?
I think so.
I believe so. So if you are reporting the number of kilowatt hours and the number of therms in your project, the DDX will automatically calculate your operational carbon based off of I believe it's the EIA or Energy Star's calculation methodology that I think we have linked in the help pages. And that will be both for your operational carbon, your gross operational carbon, as well as any operational carbon you offset by providing renewable energy on site. And what's the other one? And then the one to the right is just kilograms of, that's your operational carbon intensity. So per meter square, similar to your EUIs, your intensity per square foot.
Thank you for explaining that, Jesse. It is confusing. There is a place in the help pages that explains that more. These calculations were brought to us. Thank you, Ina. She threw that in the chat. Through a collaboration that we had this fall with DOE, and they helped us fund these additional numbers within the DDX. So it is still pretty new to all of us. And Ina, can you remind me when we will have somebody else? While Jesse is incredibly helpful, we will also have the consultant attending one of our open office hours in the coming months in case anyone has any additional questions regarding those new calculations to help us explain anything that we are perhaps not doing as well right now. So we'll continue to look at those. It doesn't change your inputs. So all of the information you're putting into the DDX would be the same. This is just an additional feature that will happen from the information it has. So I did see the another question about embodied carbon and where does that go? So we only kind of touched on this top section of energy use. So we also have a section where it talks about renewable energy sources. So telling us what kind of renewables that you're using on your project. And we do include that in our report every year. So you can kind of get an understanding of what types of renewables are being most commonly used on projects that are reported. We have a section for lighting power density. So if you did an interior only project, this would show up and the PEY section would not. But you can tell us your lighting power density on a whole building project, but you are not required to. And then here we've got the embodied carbon tab. So you would say if you have embodied carbon, you would select yes. And then all of these additional fields pop up. So similar to the embodied carbon or the operational or PEY above, you need to say when was the model done. So what is the predicted embodied carbon number? And we were going to say 654, what tool? And so I'm going to now address another change that was made to both the PUI. So when you put in an energy model or when you put in a embodied carbon model, if you say other, there's this little field and it's going to say other carbon modeling tool name. And you will have to tell us what the other is because none of you were telling us what tool you were using. You would just say other, and then we had no idea. And that was not helpful. So you will now be required to tell us other if it is truly other, but odds are it will actually be in the list. So I want all of you to know that now because it might take a little bit of tracking down. And you now have 3 months to go figure out what that tool is. And hopefully we will have a much more robust set of data around tools that are being used for our 2023 reporting information. And that I think, was it 70% of the projects said other last year? Or was that right, Nina? Give or take. So 70% of you did not use other as a tool. I know it. So hopefully we can make that information more useful for us and more useful again to our partners at DOE who are tracking accuracy and like trying to figure out what you all are using when you guys are doing this. So I'm going to say it was an other, but you do have to type in a name to make that little red piece go away. If you have the information on what version of a tool, people would like to know that. Then you have to say what scope was included. Was it substructure, superstructure, and then you can also say enclosure, interior, and other, and then what stage. So was it A1 through 3 or 4 or 5, B1? So there are all the options. And then you would include all that information. There's a question about biogenic carbon. If you have that information, you can put that here. And then any additional inputs. So if you have a window to wall ratio, you can add that information. So then we would save as we have input our embodied carbon and PUI information. And that project can be complete. So I have not been looking at the chat. Is there anything in particular we need to circle back to? Looks like you guys are answering most of the questions in real time.
There are 2 or 3 questions around reporting older projects if you're a new signatory. And I've seen it a couple of different times, tried to answer it, but I think it'll be easier for me to just say it than go hunting for those. If you're a new signatory in the last couple of years, you don't need to go find the last 10 years worth of data. please don't do this to yourself. You only need to deal with what has been in either design or construction during this calendar year. And if your project hits substantial completion on January 3rd and you want to ignore it, I'm not going to tattle. I get it. But for most of us, if it was in construction through, I've got one hitting substantial in February, it'll get reported into 2024. But it's either been in design or construction. If it was in design for 2/3 of the year and goes on hold and you want to take credit, do it. Make sure you put it on hold after you submit. Because if you spent 8 months before they went to sit around for 6 months and bid, take it, because that was a lot of your staff and a lot of your time. A lot of that's a judgment call, but don't go back and try to retroactively report old years because it could throw off your current numbers. If for some reason you have a new project type and you want to go get your old data, do it. I have had to do that for our justice practice. I was very conscious to put it under an old reporting year so it would not change my current year's numbers. So I went and dug up a bunch of old projects, put them all in the system so that we had the data in our master export and we had a record somewhere centralized. But I didn't want to mess with my current numbers. So that is a strategy. If you are looking to do that and you need that centralized place, that's an option for you. But don't feel like you have to do that. And then the other one was reporting a backlog of projects from previous firms. If you've recently merged and both of you used to report in the DDX, talk to Melissa. There's a way now on the back end where we can merge those databases under one single firm. And that can be really helpful. If they did not previously report, again, don't feel like you have to put them in the system unless there's one particular data field you want, and then it's your choice. Just backdate that. It'll make your life easier.
Yeah, so there were those places where you could say when the data was reported. So in the project, so if we pick any project, if we were tracking data, you can go back and say that that was data for 2022, and you can save that data point. And that way you can have previous information for that project as a part of that project's history without actually changing your portfolio. So that is, if that is helpful for your internal tracking, definitely do that. But again, don't try to make up for past work. As Vanessa said, you're gonna just do what's in front of you. We don't need to look back in time. And again, yes, we have just this year, we are launching the merge feature. So let us know if you have had two firms that have merged. We are still in the process of actually doing that for those firms that have merged. So we will have that in the next couple of weeks, but it is exciting that nobody's data has to get lost anymore. And that you can truly have two firms become one and all the projects will still exist. And you don't have to resubmit everything, especially if you're two large firms and you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects for each of them. Hopefully this will make everyone's lives easier. So just email 2030commitment@ai.org and we will group you in with the other folks we already know have merged, and hopefully we'll get that out ASAP. So I think the other question I saw.
I would also say about selecting which projects to report. If this is the first time you're doing it and you only have a couple projects that have energy models, I would just submit those couple projects. You can also submit your other projects if they don't have energy models. You just say it's not modeled, and then we're just tracking what your EUIs are based off of project type and size. So, start small if it's your first time. You don't have to go for every single project if that feels like too much. Ideally, we'd be tracking all of our work every year.
Thanks, Jesse. So I'm gonna touch on submitting a portfolio for a second. So here is where you would do that. We would say you're submitting it for 2023. Again, this is admin only. And if you obviously I've practiced this already, so I've already submitted my pretend portfolio for 2023. But so if you have as well, you'll get a little error message. You can override your portfolio. So if you submit a portfolio and then and you submit it in February and you decide, you know, that you found all those additional energy modeling tools that you were missing, and you want to add those in, you can resubmit it again in March, and it will override the information. So it's not going to add to it; it's going to override it. So if you don't put in the whole portfolio, it won't be quite right. So then it shows me all these projects that are in there. And so I can select all, or I can go, and so I can look through here and I can say, this one's a test project, this one's a test project, and I don't want to include those. And when I am all done, I can go down here. I say, I confirm that this as a snapshot reflects my company's full design portfolio, and I consent to have AI publish or share my company's PUI reduction publicly. So we usually, even though we ask this, we will check with you again before we ever did that. We do, as you guys see in some of the reports, we do highlight certain firms, but we would never highlight your firm and not tell you we were going to do that. So we ask for this here, and that kind of creates a shorter list of people we might go back to and ask to highlight later. So I can check both of those, and then I'm going to hit continue. And then it will process. So you're going to go to this field and you can return your portfolio. You will receive an email after that will confirm that your portfolio was submitted and what was in it. This will change over here, your little reports tab. So your reports tab will tell you all your projects. If we look at 2023, and you can see how your portfolio is performing. And you can look at this for 2023, and you can look back in time and compare different years and how you've been performing over time, if you've improved, if things have gotten better, if things maybe have gotten worse, and try to figure out how things are going. Now I'm going to touch on the bulk import, because I believe that was a question. You do not have to click I give consent to share PUI. If you say no, then it is no. We do not force anyone. Again, all right, so this is the one thing I didn't touch on this one. We touch it in our general. The only data that is shared publicly is aggregated data. We will not share the performance of your firm. We will not say that HOK is performing at 80% reduction. We will not say that, you know, they have this many projects. We will not say what kind of projects. We will not say where they are. We will do none of those things. Your information is private. And if you click that, again, we will ask you again if you are okay with sharing the general overall PUI number. And that is it. And that is, again, only if you're okay with it. Everything else, what projects you have, how many projects you have, how much square footage you have, none of that is public information, and we will not share that. So I know that there are a lot of concerns about privacy, and that is important. I'm going to actually touch on the one about MEP 2040. I don't think MEP 2040 has a database at the moment, but so they can't share data that way. But one thing you can do is in a project, you can add a collaborator. So if you want your mechanical engineer to be able to access your project, or a consultant, you can go in here and add a collaborator. So if I wanted to go here and I wanted to add Jesse, and then I can pull from a million Jessies that are in here, but not this Jesse. Why don't I see you, Jesse? All
I
right.
don't know. I haven't accepted your friend request on the DDX, I guess.
Apparently. All right. So I can add Vanessa to read only, or I can add Vanessa to edit. And then I can send that invite to Vanessa. She will receive an email, and then she will be able to log into her DDX account and edit that project. So if she has information I don't have, we can make sure that it's all accurate and that she can do that work. I know that there are a lot of firms that do that and share those projects. And we will have a share with an entire firm ability later this year, but we're not going to have that available for this reporting year. So if you have two firms that, again, we aren't going to have it right now, but there is a feature coming where two firms can share a whole project versus it being a consultant working on another project.
Hey, Melissa, jumping to a new question. If you want to change the point of contact, the administrative point of contact for your firm, we have to email you and Ina, right? It does not appear that it'll let me change that.
So within the company,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh.
you're an admin and you can't change that, then yes, you need to, do you always have
No,
to?
you can do it there on the bottom right. I had something over that. So
That's
there's
okay.
the answer, everyone. Bottom right, the little pencil will let you change it on the company tab.
Yes. So if you are an admin, you can change the admin POC for your firm. I don't recommend doing that without talking to that person first, but that sounds like a political issue within your firm that I'm not going to get in the middle of. But I recommend talking about who the appropriate person is at the firm of all the admins, who that will be. That will be the person who is receiving more emails from Ina than the rest of you. And you all will receive a lot, but that person will receive even more. But that is the individual that will get the email once the entire portfolio is submitted. It won't go to all admins. So that is important. All right, we're going to pop into the bulk import. So how do you use bulk import? And I know that there are other conversations about research, and we'll get to that in a minute. First, we have to actually teach everyone else how to bulk import their firm information. So you pop it over here to import. So I'm going to go back. We are on the company tab under manage projects, import. You are bringing it in. You download one of these templates and you got to make sure it's the newest recent one. Since we do have that additional field of the other tool, that is important for you to make sure that that field is there. And there is an additional, let me see, I did have it open. It's hiding behind my Zoom. So there we go. There is one additional field in the new bulk import to note. So again, make sure you have the most recent. All the way over here, there is a thing called placeholders. So apparently, a lot of people seem to use bulk import with a placeholder, i.e. they would upload their portfolio all at once and their PEUI would actually be a placeholder number. So they didn't have all the information when they wanted to upload the entire portfolio, and they would put a number in there like 666, and then somebody might forget to actually go back in and change that later. So if you are a firm that uses placeholders, you can say that it is placeholder, and in your managed portfolio, there will be an option to identify all the placeholder projects to go back in and change them. So we do not get fake data like a PEUI of 666 for projects. If you do not use placeholders, just say no. That's it. It won't do anything for you. You just need to make sure that column is there, and then it says no, and then you can ignore it. But it will be important, again, for that data quality to make sure that we don't have fake data kicking around. So after you upload or download the new updated handy dandy Excel, you put all your projects in, you choose your file, and you upload it. So we're going to use this one. We're going to upload. And then we go down here. So it's uploaded the file here. You have the option of submitting this directly as your portfolio submission, or you can import it and go to the submit portfolio page that we looked at earlier and double check everything. That's up to you, whatever your best process is. So I'm going to not submit this portfolio as I've already submitted a portfolio once today. So I uploaded that. And here it will tell me if there are errors and things that I did wrong. So big one that people do wrong is office location names. So it has to match how it is written in the DDX exactly. So if it says District of Columbia versus USDC, it will not match up. So you have to make sure that you only have the options that are listed within your portfolio and that they are spelled the same way. So if you spelt Columbia wrong in the DDX, either fix it or spell them wrong both places, and that is the only way it will match up. So it had the wrong square footage, and it had an issue with the zip code. Then it also didn't have I said it had embodied carbon, but then didn't include a tool. And then didn't include LCA stages. So those are all the errors that are in that particular spreadsheet that we need to fix to upload it again correctly. So to do that, you would just make the updates, choose the file again, and upload the entire portfolio again. But it will tell you exactly what rows, i.e. what projects there are issues on. So I hope that helps with that. Checking to see if there's anything else in the chat that we need.
There was a question about bulk upload, like versus putting a project directly in the DDX. I believe you can do both. If you want to upload most of your work or a couple projects through bulk upload and then go to the DDX and enter in a couple projects manually, then you can submit those combined. I believe, right? I've never done that, but I'm pretty sure that's possible.
You can do
Thank
that.
you.
The most important thing is making sure that your project number lines up between your previous portfolio. So, and what is in the DDX. So if you are doing bulk import and it is another year for that project, so you reported it in 2022 and you want an updated information, you need to make sure that project number aligns with what is in the DDX. Otherwise, it's just going to create a new project. And then you're going to be questioning why you have twice as many projects in the DDX as you do your portfolio. So that is very important. As I noted, where it was in the inputs, that's kind of where it is in this particular form. So as long as that is consistent, you can update the same project each way. And that is absolutely fine. And I know that we are running out of time. So I don't know if there was any super important actual how to report questions left, or can we get into the cute research tab, which is an added bonus. Again, another wonderful gift from DOE, but it does not actually affect your reporting. It's just additional information you get from reporting. So I want to make sure we've taught you how to report before we teach you the additional handy dandy tools and benefits. Does anyone know if there are any questions in there that I haven't answered? Or that you guys didn't answer in the chat?
I think we've got them all covered.
All right. Well, if there are more questions in the chat, jump in there. I'm gonna actually, Vanessa or Jesse, do you want to explain research?
Go for
Sure.
it, Jesse.
Love to. So this is hotly requested tab that used to exist in the old version of DDX a handful plus years ago and has made its return, but it's even better than it was before. So you can see Melissa's clicking on here. You can have a project use type, so you can filter this information. You can have a project spotlight too. So say you're working on a certain elementary school, you can click on that elementary school and then also use the filters to, like what I typically do, I work on a lot of K-12 projects. I will say, take my most recent year submission data, so the 2022 submission data, take the K-12 project type, and then take my climate zone, because I really only care about comparing our work to other K-12 work that is in a similar climate zone, because it is most relevant to all the work I do and foresee. And then what's returned when you hit filter is it'll show you two rows. There's the DDX data, so the hundreds or thousands of projects that are in that, or in this case, 57 projects that are in the filter data selection, and what the range is in net PEY. And then below that, your firm's data, how many projects, what the range is in net PEY for that, for your firm data. You cannot see other firms' data. You can only see the relationship between your firm data and the collective pool as a whole. So privacy remains intact for other firms, but it does allow you to compare what all those filters, right? Project phase, like you only care about looking at projects on, say, schematic design, or projects that are energy modeled or not. Like I said, climate zone, project type. If a project has, it looks like fuel sources, country, areas, minimum, maximum, EUIs, minimum, maximum. So there are a bunch of filters. My guess is you only have to use a couple to get a good comparison based off what you're interested in. Yeah, I think that sums it up. Did I miss anything, Vanessa?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, we're still working on some, it's still new, so we're still working through some of that. As he said, there is the compare tool. So if you are in any project, you can go to the little compare button here and pop right over to research, and it's going to pull the data based on the project that you were in and compare to previous to similar projects. Much like the old research, if there are, it's so specific the way that it pulled that in, that if there are less than 10 projects, you are not going to get aggregate data. Just for the privacy, again, we respect everyone's projects and their private information, so there were not enough projects similar to that. So I can go up here and make it more general. So maybe I don't want it in DC, and see if that opens up. It does not. Very specific project here. And so that will help look at that information. So again, this is bonus. It doesn't change the information you input into the DDX, but hopefully it will help you get a better understanding of what where your project is in comparison to the overall portfolio and general access out there. So hopefully you take a look at that and learn a lot. Any last questions? Because we have 2 minutes
You had
left.
2023 reporting year selected, right? And so
That's-
there's no projects selected and submitted in
That's a good
2023
point.
probably yet, or maybe there are. I don't know if any of you are ahead of the
There we
game
go.
here. Yeah.
There was a handy, if you swipe over it,
Oh, you can zoom. That's
you can
nice.
make it more specific. I don't apparently have any projects, or one project that is perfectly performance versus the entire DDX. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We have a minute left. I think join us. We have additional office hours, more specific topics as you continue to dive deeper into your portfolio. We will have certain breakouts around certain project types. We will have a conversation around international projects. We have tried to identify those at specific times so we can go in more into depth as you continue to work through your projects and have much more specific questions about particular projects. And we will address those over the course of Q1.
And this will be recorded and put it on our YouTube channel that has all past recordings. If you want to delve into all of those, as well as our 2013 DDX refreshers that we had this past November. But you'll be receiving an email from us in the next 24 hours or so to access that.
And I'm going to selfishly ask if you have some heavy hitting international questions to send those through to Melissa and Ina ahead of time so that I have time to pull resources, because I don't always do a great job of doing it on the fly in this call. So those are ones where we need a little extra time, especially if I have to go translate something. It's not pretty if I have to do it live.
I'll send a reminder to folks who are registered for that.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Wow.